Okay, there's the top of the hour. We will get going. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully, this time I'm going to remember what I said my agenda was and actually stick to it. Sorry if I keep bouncing around. I've got about three things I'm trying to get set up at the same time. So, let's start it off with Microsoft Build was this week, and I figured I'd go through and at least call out what I thought were the most exciting announcements to me. Share some links, see what people think. So, for people who are wondering, um, the Build Conference is Microsoft's big developer conference every year. They go through, they outline sort of where they're at, what features are coming, what cool new bits do they have to drop and share previews and that kind of thing with everybody. So it was Tuesday and Wednesday, at least in my time zone this week. I know a lot of stuff got re-aired a few times to try to account for people across different time zones. And a lot of it focused around Azure-y stuff. And so if you look at all of the big announcements, you'll find huge lists of people, this great Azure thing, that great Azure thing. But I focus mostly on desktop development. And so the things I find exciting are probably not what align with most people. So if you are like me and you're wondering and going, hey, how can I catch up on Build? The nice part is because it was free and online this year, they have posted all of their stuff out on their Channel 9. And in addition, they have a whole bunch of videos and sessions that you can go back and watch and catch up. So if you're curious or you want to go and see what's out there and what's been done, there is the link there for it. Let me switch over here. Let's see if I can remember my keyboard shortcuts. I can't remember how to use a keyboard. Okay, so there's the Channel 9 page that's in the link there. But then I've got kind of a whole list of tabs here of cool announcements I was thinking of. So let's see. Boom. Let's start with this one. So .NET 5 Preview 4 is out. So what is happening is at least at present today, you've got .NET Framework and .NET Core. And for desktop development, you can build a desktop app targeting either one of those. And if you like it and you're happy, that is great. But moving forward, what's happening is rather than having these sort of two separate frameworks that you can build towards, everything's coming together in what they are calling .NET 5. So I don't know this for certain, but I assume they skipped from .NET Core 3, and then they've got .NET Framework 4.8 is the latest. And so rather than trying to confuse people with numbers, they just said, okay, we'll increment by one and go with the biggest and land on 5. That way it's clear that it's the next step forward for both .NET Core and .NET Framework. And so there is a whole lot. I am not going to even begin to do this justice. The important thing for people who are interested in the material design and Xaml framework, I do plan to have support for .NET 5. I've thrown the preview on my machine. It compiles and runs. So not planning on throwing .NET 5 support in the NuGet package yet. This is expected to drop late this year. So as we get closer and the bits are a little bit more stable, I will certainly start adding it to the NuGet package so that Material Design and XAML is ready for you if you want to build your WPF app with it. So if you are interested in all of the wonderful goodness in .NET 5, it is very easy to get going. You just download the preview bits, change your target framework from .NET Core App 3.1 to .NET 5, and you're off to the races. And that is all there is to it. There is a little bit in here to note about if you're going to be doing WPF, making sure that you actually pick the correct TFM or target framework moniker for Windows-specific functionality. So if you are going to be building something like that, be aware. Let's see, was there anything else? C# 9. This is the other one. So this is sort of a small summary. Mads Thorgensen has a much more thorough write-up. And the language team is always quick to point out that no feature is set in stone until it actually ships. So this is where they are currently at and where they believe everything is going. But if something goes wrong, they can pull the plug at any point. So the coolest thing coming in all of this is this init feature. Basically, they're separating out the content or the separation of construction and initialization of an object. So right now, if you were to have auto properties, you don't have a great way of ensuring that when your object is instantiated, that somebody has set all of the properties. If you do a lot of custom structs, you get that for free, right? Where the compiler will validate that all of those are set, but you don't get that on a class. And so this is effectively starting to bring that into it. And so this is nice and great. There's a lot more details about it here of how it can work with different properties and that kind of thing. But the important feature that this goes through and enables is the C# record type, which is something that they've talked about doing for several versions now, right? And so this is ultimately what we're looking to get down to is this, and so having a feature that enables building out true record types in C#. They've got some fancy stuff to go along with it, this fancy with syntax for effectively copying it. Yes, Jared. The init feature is awesome. I am very excited for it. I think it's going to be great once people get used to it. I think when people first see it, it's going to cause a lot of headache. Oh, not what I was aiming to do. So let's do this. Let's do this. Let's see if I can get this to set up about like that. Right? So with syntax is kind of like a fancy, you can almost think of it like a copy constructor, or you would use it in sort of the similar type of situation where it's I want to augment things together and effectively merge those. There's a lot of different stuff to come along with this. Value-based equality, so your record types will have built-in equality stuff, very similar to how the structs equality or like your value tuple works today. So magical stuff there, and then being able to do data members. Again, I'm kind of blitzing through all this stuff. There's not a lot of I don't think I could do it justice. Definitely, if you are interested in this, go and watch Mad's talk. It is excellent. So I'm going to move on. As you can see, my scroll bar, I am like down 15%. There's a lot. I guess, well, okay, so the article ends at like, what, 20%. So most of the way there. But lots and lots of goodness potentially coming in C# 9. Again, potential. Let's carry down the list. So the other big announcement that came at Build, another one that made me very excited, is what they're calling Maui, or Multi-Platform App UI. So there's a constant dream that everyone has of a truly cross-platform framework. Things like Uno, Electron. I don't like to give credence to the JavaScript-based ones because bleh. I guess Electron is JavaScript-based, but it's better-ish. This is effectively the next evolution of what is currently Xamarin Forms. So being able to go through and build out a truly cross-platform native UI. For people who are familiar with the Xamarin Forms structure, Maui is very similar to that in that you write your UI code once and it runs that code through different renderers for each target platform, and so you get a native UI, but you only had to write your code once. With that said, the first question is always, well, how do I customize it? Because I want it to look different on iOS or on Windows or Mac OS, right? And you certainly can do that. You can go through and modify how the renderers behave, or even just put your own renderers in place if you don't like anything about them. So a lot of this is very heavily based on Xamarin Forms and how that has been working. So people familiar with that structure will feel very much at home. The really big changes, and I don't know if this picture really does it justice, right? Is they vastly simplified the overhead. If anyone's ever built a Xamarin Forms app and you go and create it and you end up with immediately like 4 or 5 projects just spit out at you, and it's like, oh, where are all of my things? Who moved my cheese, right? They have cut away all of the cruft, right? So your CS proj is now this big. Itty bitty little thing, right? Rather than having weird Xamarin namespaces, everything is moving towards the system namespace. So SystemMaui, system device, where you can find all of the stuff that you want. For people, again, Xamarin Essentials was sort of your cross-platform way of doing that. A lot of that's being merged and changed into the namespace. The project layout is vastly simpler. If you want to include fonts, images, etc., you put them in your resources, and you're done. And you don't have to worry about, well, how does iOS know how to load an image? How does Android know how to load an image? How does WPF load an image? All of those differences are just handled for you, because quite frankly, when I want to put an image in my app, I don't want to think about that. I want the image to go in my app. And then also being able to do platform-specific stuff, you can just go through and add the code that you want for each platform where you need it, and it works. The only downside to Maui is they don't have preview bits available yet. So, forthcoming, it will be exciting and awesome, not here yet, which is mildly disappointing. But definitely on the roadmap. The other thing that they did is, in addition to the standard like Xaml MVVM pattern that I'm used to, that I love, that I hope everyone here loves too, they are also giving you an alternative with the MVU pattern, so model view update. And I honestly have not spent enough time with it. My gut reaction makes me go, ugh, because this feels hard to reason about my UI. Now, with that said, this is heavily based upon, you can read some white papers about this Elm programming model and how it's set up and the rationale behind it, and it's actually got good reasoning behind it. There's a Xamarin Forms project called Comet by Clancy that has had this for Xamarin for a while now, and so this MVU stuff is largely just bringing that library in as a first-class citizen. So lots of stuff here. If you have an existing app, it is going to require, you know, some namespace changes and whatnot to update. But until we start seeing previews, hard to say how big that will be. Now, something slightly more relevant towards what I like is WinUI 3. So, WinUI 3 promises to be the successor of WPF and UWP. Right? So this is the new latest and greatest Windows UI framework. It is largely, if you've built UWP apps in the past, you will feel very much at home. It builds and runs and works great. I was going to show it off. I have downloaded the preview, but then I ran into issues with the desktop template, and I don't know whether I've botched something or something's wrong with the default template. I didn't have enough time to debug it before tonight to figure out what was going on. All I know is I hit F5 after File New Project, and I got a black screen. So, something went wrong. Don't know if I missed a step. Don't know if I didn't do something right, but the UWP one seemed to fire up and work just fine. So, ultimately, this is where, for the material design and XAML library, this is probably one of the next platforms I plan on supporting. Largely because this will also bring some level of UNO support as well, as they're already supporting WinUI 3. And so it'll be a nice step forward. This is very much preview bits. But the performance and awesomeness coming from this, I don't think can be understated. So if anyone is watching this and interested in helping out with the WinUI 3 port of the material design in XAML, please get in contact with me. Would love to collaborate with some people and try and get it done. I don't know if I will get the entire library in and ready, but I'd like to have at least a mild amount of stuff working. That would be nice. Okay, and now even more exciting stuff. So Project Reunion. So the big issue between UWP and WPF is largely this bifurcation that they're trying to show with this little GIF here between what APIs are available. Ultimately, if you were going to decide between building a WPF or a UWP app, a big driving factor was what APIs do you need access to, right? What functionality from the OS do you need? Project Reunion aims to eliminate that, or at least bring those things right up to feature parity. So basically giving you access to all of the great new Windows 10 goodness inside of desktop apps like WPF, and also then at the same time giving UWP access to those Win32 libraries. At this point, I don't know if there's many that they're missing. I think they've largely gotten there, but getting access to all the APIs from one spot, right? So this is exciting to me. And this is largely what's going on to enable the WinUI 3 to effectively be that next step between these. So don't think WPF is going away. There is no way it is dying anytime soon. Um, and so if you've got apps on it, don't feel like you need to rush to port. Like nothing, WinUI 3 is not released. Time will tell if it's actually going to be the replacement for WPF. But remember, WPF was supposed to replace WinForms, and WinForms is still going strong. So I think history has pointed out that UI frameworks, as long as Microsoft keeps supporting them, which they, as far as I'm aware, are planning to for the foreseeable future, they don't die. They just keep going. Okay, so next thing that's really exciting. So if you haven't downloaded any of the latest Visual Studio updates, hang on, I don't think I dropped those. I missed some links. So there is the boom, boom, boom. Anybody watching the recording of this afterwards, I will make sure to have these in my YouTube description as well. So try to make it a little easier for people. So if you haven't done so, the latest version of Visual Studio, which I updated to this morning, haven't really used it yet. We're going to see how it goes. There is a lot of cool awesomeness all bundled into these latest versions of Visual Studio. So a cool thing right out the gate to be aware of is the Xaml binding extension. I think I had mentioned a couple months ago. That was preview. It appears to be being pulled in as a first-class citizen now inside of Visual Studio. So you can actually get, again, they don't do it justice with the screenshot, but in the little black button drop-down thing on your window, you now get this big red circle that you can click on, and you can now see your XAML binding failures right here in Visual Studio. So no more digging through your output window looking for binding failures. This should make everyone happy. It makes me very, very excited, right? The number of times bugs get released because, oops, didn't realize a binding failure was happening. So this is awesome, right? There are some known limitations. Bear in mind, this is some preview level stuff, but it works fairly well. There's a couple things here. So inline color preview, for people who have been around ReSharper, this is not a shock, right? ReSharper does the colored underline underneath your brush color. They've done a little box. Huzzah. I actually like the box better. The underline tends to get confusing if you get like squiggles or whatnot going on. Or heaven forbid you have something that's close to white. It's really hard to see. Let's see. So designer updates. They've got light bulb actions. So your similar to your IntelliSense stuff in C# built in. Does that? Let's see. Hey Megan. Does the red icon only show up if there are binding failures present then, or is it always there so that you always have to check to make sure there aren't any? So my understanding, and I haven't actually confirmed this yet, but I believe it will show up at, as soon as a binding failure is present. So if you have XAML that hasn't been loaded yet, you will not see the binding failure. But I believe as you go through your various screens, if there are binding failures, you'll then start to see them show up in the window, because it's not checking them until it actually has to go and evaluate those bindings. So that is a great question. But we're going to be playing with some stuff tonight, and so we can confirm that. Hopefully I don't have binding errors. That would be humbling, though actually I'm fairly confident we do have some. So yeah, light bulb actions inside of the designer. Huzzah. They've done some magical stuff around the yeah, it will be good to check. They've done some magical stuff around the properties window, which is cool and nice. For those people who watched my stream before, you'll notice I use the properties window almost never, and whatnot. That is something I will mention too. The WinUI 3 stuff, there's some known limitations, one of which is IntelliSense is only partially implemented. When they say partially implemented, please read mostly not there. The amount of IntelliSense you get is this big, this teeny little bit. It's kind of like base class level stuff, and that's it. So all of the useful stuff, I struggled through my few minutes of playing with it and went, oh boy. Yeah, it is rough alphabets, and it definitely feels alpha. Let's see. So hot reload, stuff relaunches really fast, which is great. So, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, drag and drop in the XAML code editor. Huzzah! Again, I have a personal feeling that I don't use my mouse a lot. My hands are usually on the keyboard, and I prefer to not reach for the mouse if I don't need it. That's just me. Some people like their click and draggy pretty stuff. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Related stuff. So, yeah, related WebView stuff. Great. So if you've got WebViews in your app, there you've got a fancy new one for you. WinUI 3 and Community Toolkit. It is worth noting the Windows Community Toolkit has a port, or I should say, they have an open pull request where they're bringing in an MVVM library. My personal favorite is MVVM Lite because, as the name implies, it is very lightweight. Not a lot to it, but it has all the essentials that you need. And though it's been updated to support latest frameworks, MVVM Lite hasn't received a lot of love. Not that it needs much. But the Windows Community Toolkit, they have gone through and done some significant performance optimizations, like orders of magnitude level performance increases. They stripped out everything that was platform specific, so anything in MVVM Lite that was WPF specific is gone, and it's a generic MVVM framework. And once it merges, I will probably be doing a stream playing with that because it looks amazing. So if you're familiar with MVVM Lite, the APIs are pretty much a copy and paste with a namespace change, with some teeny differences. But we can come back to that at a different point. And now for something completely unrelated to everything else, for anyone who has ever coded in in BASIC, they open sourced BASIC. Huzzah, right? The best technology that they had to offer in 1983 is now open source. And you can go and read all of the lovely assembly code and all of the fun stuff. So one of the first languages I ever learned was BASIC. So this made me smile a little bit, just going, oh, how fun. But I learned BASIC in a very different environment. It was Windows 95 based environment with a pretty kid-friendly GUI, and I remember many an hour being very frustrated at my computer. Very frustrated. So this brought back bittersweet memories. So for anybody interested, there's all those links. Again, I'll include all of these in my video post afterwards. I was really hoping that, I need to confirm, I thought, so this last week I was playing around with my automation stuff, and I thought I had built a nice tweet bot, but I don't see the tweet, so clearly it's not working. So I have bugs to fix. But I was going to show that off, but since it's not working, probably shouldn't show it. Probably broken. Probably very broken. Okay, so let's see here real quick. Visual Studio. Okay, boom. Okay, so this is back to the material design in XAML project. And before I get too carried away, I did promise people on Gitter that I would be going through and checking questions and answering them. So I'm going to start there, and then we'll come back to this. So, where's my Gitter? Boom. So, Gitter chat. I think I'll just leave it here and go through and check it. I don't think I've got too many questions, and it looks like most of them have been answered. So there's a couple questions in here that look like they still are outstanding. So Jesper was trying to help out Tamper with some transition stuff. So it looks like, yeah, so the transition stuff is an interesting one. So we'll take a look. So the short version is he's gone through and created a couple transition slides and specified some opening effects, right? But he has to manually set forward wipe and backward wipe to null, and is that intentional? And I think the answer is yes, but let's just confirm that, because unfortunately I don't remember. Let's see here. So if I remember correctly, combine transitions. boom, 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 do that. So if we come into here, this is just straightforward. Where is my transition demo home? Clearly not easy to see in the demo. Let's jump over to the WPF and themes and transitioner. Where's it buried in the? No, where's my transitioner? Oh right, this is all done in code. I forgot about that. Oh, lovely. So let's check out the transition slide. So I'm going to just move this over to the side so I can keep track of it. Let's see. Forward wipe and backward wipe. So I'm going to just minimize that, minimize this, move some stuff around because why not? Make this a little more fun. Forward wipe. So I think so the short version is these guys both have defaults set, and so it's not so is that intended behavior. Circle wipe by default. So yeah, so I think the answer to this one is going to be intentional, not really, but that's the current behavior. So let's go and grab some links because I always try to be helpful in the chats. So let's see, make that a little bigger, make this a little bigger. Jump in, so forward wipe, transitioner slide, CS. Transitioner slides, yes. And let's come down here and specifically the forward wipe and backward wipe. So we'll grab those lines and boom, boom, boom. But both of those do have defaults that are set to non-null. Let's see. And markdown comments for the win. Trying to be helpful. Because it is probably a control that has gotten the least amount of attention. Okay, so, and then this one here, this guy is a little more interesting. So, I believe, where's my GitHub? This one here, I think we actually have, so the question, I realize I bounced through that really quickly, is asking about being able to do or use material design in XAML inside of a third-party extension, which is perfectly fine. And I believe we've actually seen this. Revit. Trying to remember. I believe I've actually seen exact issues logged against this, and it's one of these guys. Let me check. I think I've actually got something I put into the wiki for it because this has come up enough times that it felt like something that should be written down. Let's see, custom palette, override default styles, maybe in the frequently asked questions. When custom styles applied, validation. Nope, maybe not. Maybe it is just buried in here. Yeah, so this guy here. I believe this is what we are looking for, but I want to jump back real quick and just make sure, because this might be the other one. There's been a couple people who have done this. So 980 and 1249. So let's see. Yes, it is possible, but it is not really easy. Take a look at the samples in 980, and let's see, 980, 1249. 1249 for some examples. Boom. And then it just turns those into links for me. Yay! Okay, so back over to here. So one of my goals, I guess, my self-imposed goal, is to try and get it so that this library, so that material design in Xaml can be released quicker, because that would be a good thing. It helps for pushing out when you distribute a bug, then you can push out a fix even quicker. And the nightly releases usually handle people who want early access and previews and those kinds of things, and that's great. But ultimately, I want to get to full release status to be able to kick out releases really quickly. And so in an effort to do that, one of the things that's been holding us back is my ability to test, or my reliance on having other people test versions of the library as they go out. So what I'd like to move past is to actually do UI tests as part of the release process. That way I can, at least as bugs come up, start writing UI tests for them, because you can only unit test so much in a desktop app, right? Anything UI related, you really shouldn't write unit tests for, because the amount of effort you will spend writing that unit test is not worth the gain. What UI tests are good for is to validate some level of functionality. Now, we still have the issue of this is a theme library. So certain things will not lend themselves well to either form of testing, right? But some things, like the most recently release, we kicked out a bug where we added an adorner to a WPF element, the text box, and unfortunately that adorners are drawn on top of every other WPF element. And by default, your adorner layer is at the window level. So if you put a text box down, it meant that that underlying control would draw on top of everything. So anybody using a dialog host or a tab control, those underlines were coming forward repeatedly. So conveniently, all people had to do was either roll back or grab the latest nightly release, and the problem is resolved. But it does pose a bit of a problem, and it would have been nice to catch some of this stuff ahead of time, because my manual testing is not sufficient nor accurate. So I was looking to go through and bring in UI tests into this. And so this is a first start. And specifically, I will grab, let me grab my version of, sure, this will be fine. Come over here. So on my fork, because I didn't push this into the main library, so material design, this guy, and then this branch. I do what? Oh, wrong repo. Let's try that again. This repo. There we go. This one. This one with way too many branches that I need to clean up. Right? So this branch here has the code at least where I'm going to start from. Right? And the goal is to go through and fire up our demo application, right? And at a bare minimum, I would like to validate that on every build that I can fire up this demo app and I can click through each of these things without the app crashing. That's a pretty low bar. However, there's been several changes that have gone in over the years, I guess I haven't been doing this for that long, months, that can cause XAML crashes, right? So that is the goal, is to at least get this through, and then I'm considering that my minimum viable product, and then from there we'll expand out and add more, and hopefully as we get bugs that can be UI tested, we can expand out these UI tests and make it better, right? Because I would prefer to not have these things fall apart. I'm also very tempted to do some cool stuff with computer vision, to go through and validate that things actually display correctly. So that might be a future one. Don't think we're going to get all the way there tonight, unless things go really smoothly for me. But based on my experience so far, they've gone poorly. So what I have is unit test 1. So not a good choice of name. And test 1, also not a good choice of name. But I've got this test base class that I have started. I largely poached this from a project that some people who actually know what they're doing had done. So, Mike, Sean, thank you. I have blatantly stolen your work and beaten it into submission. So there's a bunch of things in here that I'm not overly happy with that I want to clean up and fix. But in here, there's a bunch of helper methods that will probably be useful at a later point when we get around to using them. But the key part here is this launch application, right? So this basically just goes through to make sure that the app is running, because for a UI test, you actually need to run something else. So right now, this is hard-coded to the debug directory. Don't like that a lot, right? And it's specifically using the NetCore 3.1 version of our demo app, right? And our demo app actually compiles with both .NET Framework and .NET Core. So at some point, we might go through and test both because it's really not that much effort. It's just processing time is all we're losing, right? So it goes through, builds up a process info, which is largely wasteful-ish. Goes and hunts out the processes, right? So tries to find an existing process called Material Design Demo. So if it finds one, it'll use that. Otherwise, it'll go through and start up a new process and then throw a little bit of a delay in there, only because it seemed like there was some timing issues without it, right? So small delay just to make it to say, hold on 1 second. And then down here, so there is a lovely project, which I thought I had the links to saved, and clearly I don't, so we'll go through and grab them. So this WinAppDriver here, this is something else I need to figure out how to address. So from their releases page, all I did was download the latest 1.1 release, right? So downloaded the MSI, ran the installer, next, finish, everything's happy. The problem being is my path doesn't match this. It's technically D:, right? So again, not overly happy with this. Not overly happy things are duplicated, but again, we'll get to that. We'll get to fixing that later. And then it goes through, it builds up some options. Apparently to use this thing, one of the magical capabilities you have to add is either something called app or top-level window. So window seemed good enough for me, so I'm grabbing the handle, converting it to a hexadecimal string, dumping that in, and then creating this new Windows driver. This is ultimately the thing that you need to do stuff with UI testing. So this guy automatically connects to the WinAppDriver host. So I believe I have that running. Let's see, this guy. So you can see I had this running previously, but when it first fires up, if we go to the top, right, you'll note it fires up and it starts looking for listeners. This is its defaults, so 127.0.0.1, which is localhost, on port 4723, which is what we have hard-coded down here. So this is all a bunch of boilerplate that I wish I didn't have to do. Feels like a lot of work, but this is what seemed to actually be the right-ish way of doing this, I guess. And then ultimately, we are going to attempt to hunt out an element by name. So something I learned very quickly is that a lot of our elements don't have accessibility on them, which is not great. So we may work on adding some accessibility to go along with this. But if we look at our main window, what I did is, where is my dock panel, text block, where are you? Color zone, there we go. So this color zone is the purple bar at the top, right? And then we don't care about the pop-up box. This text box here, right? So you'll note I added this automation properties automation ID, and I set it to Material Design and Xaml Toolkit. It happens to match the text here. That's a coincidence. These don't have to match. So set it up there just so that I had a way of finding something there. And then we grab our element. I suppose we probably shouldn't use var here. So use explicit type. And then assert that it's not null. The other thing you'll note is for this project, I did go through because I figured why not. I actually have turned nullable on. So this is another feature that I would love to go through and get into the library more. I'm thinking I may just run a script that goes through and enables nullable at the project level and then disables it on every individual file. That way I can go through and just turn it on file by file as I get to it. So other things to note is these are the magical NuGet packages that I have added. Otherwise, this is a default XUnit unit test project. So, confusing as mud? Somewhat makes sense? Am I talking to myself? I don't mind if I am. But I will happily keep going. Okay, so that's where this was going and where I was hoping to get to. And also we said we were going to check those binding errors. So I'm going to stop this for the moment, and I'm just going to F5 onto my demo app because I am curious, Megan, about the button. All right, so hot reload available. What is that? So that lets me collapse it. So now I'm questioning whether I got to go turn something on. So tools, options, something about bindings. Oy vey. Data binding, dependency properties. Just along for the ride. Hey, that's fine. I do this just because it's fun. So, by the way, if you ever have questions or whatnot, let me know. I am always happy to go and do things. I've actually been also trying to con as many people as I can into doing pair programming sessions, regardless of what the topic is. Mostly because I think it's fun. And then I have someone to talk to, rather than just myself. So at some point I may try to con you into that if there is something you're interested in doing, learning, even if it's something I don't know, because I'm happy to figure it out with you. So I'm going to jump back here real quick to these guys, because one of you, new Xaml binding failures. Options, environment, preview features. So, options, environment, and preview features. Ha 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 ha. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the one with Mark, because we will try to snag him more as available, because he's at least a good sport. And don't worry about being entertaining. That's the least of my concerns. So, XAML bindings failure window. That one. There's a lot more in here than I remember. Go to with VS Search. Ooh. I don't really want to turn on the designer. Heck, why not? Let's turn it on. What could go wrong? Model builder, configuration file nesting. Ooh. Curious about that, because I've done a lot of the nesting stuff in MS Build directly. So, okay, we'll turn that off, and then we'll just fire it back up again and see where we end up. Let's see here. Oh boy. Might have a couple pull requests to go review as well. So we may circle back to that. So let's fire this up, because I do want to see that binding error window, because that gives me a lot of excitement. So magical, find me all the things. XAML binding failures, that one. Gimme. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Binding failures. Poof. Okay, so I've got a window. That's great. Now I want to see something show up in it. Now if I'm not mistaken, our menu page has some. So it shows green. That's convenient. Maybe I should go through and add some binding errors. I could have sworn some of our windows had some binding errors. Maybe we fixed them all. Oh, ho, ho. There is a binding error. Found it. And good to know, it does stay red even after you move away from that, because this stuff gets unloaded. So as soon as it processes it, oh, and it groups them too, because there's a count. Oh, that's clever. Cannot find governing element. Now, can I double click? Oh, that was going to be too cool. I was going to say, if I can double click and this thing takes me to my target guy. So, I mean, I can probably hunt this fairly easily, right? And I think I actually know roughly where this one is located. Let's see. I know, but I can dream. What's actually really surprising to a lot of people is, so a lot of the Microsoft project managers on Twitter, if you follow them, a lot of times they will post surveys and calls where they really just want to talk to people using features and saying, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And I love those calls. They are so much fun because they basically say, hey, we're thinking about doing X. What do you think of this idea? Would you use it? It's like, ooh, I like that, or no, please don't waste your time. Not always saying that my opinion matters, but sometimes. So these guys here. So this guy is the binding one right here. So you'll note both of these. So this is going to be the one that we hit. Right, because the other one is in the other project. So this is the one we're actually running. So palette selector, so this style on a button, material design flat button. I'm wondering if, wait, what? You're telling me this isn't used anywhere. I'm going to have to disagree with that. Oh, it's an implicit style. Okay. Okay, world makes sense again. I'm like, whew. Implicit style, because it doesn't have an X key, it's going to just automatically apply to buttons. So it's used, it's just not obvious. So where are my buttons? Where are my buttons at? Let's see. I think, let's see, this is the wrap panel items template, so this is going to actually come through probably this data template, because we probably get a swatch. The swatch has a button, and this style would get applied to the button because this button doesn't have another style set. So this guy comes in here, this guy gets a foreground color, and ultimately the binding failure was what? Could not find governing element. Oh. So it's like it evaluated the binding before applying it. I kind of not overly concerned with fixing this at the moment. Ultimately because these things still work. So this is actually this screen here that triggered it. These buttons. So not overly concerned with actually addressing it, but I suspect this thing is just being evaluated too early and needs to be pushed down. But it works, so I'm like, ugh. Anyway, okay, so that's kind of cool. I do like it. Okay, but, so I'm going to go Control F5 to get the demo app up and running. Then I'm going to go back to this unit testy bit here, right? So the other wonderful piece of software that I have installed is called Accessibility Insights. So let's grab the link for that. Accessibility Insights, right? So, and unfortunately the thing sits on top all the time. So this guy here, so he is sort of like Snoop. But rather than like letting you muck with the thing, rather than letting you muck with the thing, what it does is if you hold your mouse over something for more than a few moments, come on, don't make a liar out of me. Are you going? Live inspect. There we go. So we get back here. You'll note this little play pause button. Yeah, so if you hold your mouse over this thing, it lets you start inspecting the window, right? And then we can pause it. And you can go through, and so it's not quite like Snoop where it's going to show you the whole visual tree. It shows you the accessibility view of your application. So if somebody was using a screen reader, for example, right, they're going to get something akin to this. It's very similar to like what Narrator taps into. But this is how you can tell how accessible your app is, which at this point, we can pretty much see our app not very accessible, right? Like there is not a lot here to go on. The only thing that has anything set on it is the one that I have very explicitly put an automation ID onto. So that's not great, right? So we can look at addressing that, but ultimately we need these things not only for accessibility, but for UI testing. So to be able to effectively bot this stuff through. Because the next thing we want to do is we want to find this button here, right? So we're going to do this, put this here, pause it. So you know we get a button, and that's about it. And so we could hunt down buttons on our window and then hunt it out based on bounding rect, but yuck. Yuck, 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 yuck. Because really what I'd like to do is click that button and then be able to come in here and then just start clicking my way down through each of these, which that sounds a lot better. So that's ultimately the UI test I want to write and see this thing work. So let us go, so minimize there, and minimize you because you're obnoxious beyond belief. And let's go to our demo app because ultimately we need to change some stuff. So this guy here is going to launch the application. And then I think the next step is going to be, so there's a couple thoughts here, right? And I think I'm going to do this the most dummy-friendly way first and then go back and clean up the code. So the dummy-friendly way to do this is we take our driver that's from our base class, right? And we go backwards and we, actually I think I might put activate app at the end of this guy here. So driver, oh that's, I was hoping it was going to bring the app window to the foreground. Oh, there's so many things in here that I don't know what to do with. So many things, so many things, so many things. Reset app, remove app, terminate app. And I'm noticing it has a launch app, and I'm kind of curious how that is expected to work. Again, I stole this code from another project so that had other requirements, so it's very plausible that this is not the best way to do this. But I am a noob at this, and so we're going to go with, yeah, this is the one I want to abuse at some point. Image analysis. For example, when I toggle you to dark theme, do you go dark? That sounds awesome. Yeah, so doesn't seem like I've got something to bring it forward. That's fine. If that becomes an issue, I've got a hold of the process. I can do mean stuff with it. So let's start with the main window then, and let's hunt down our little hamburger button. So ultimately, that slide out menu on the side here is coming from the drawer host. Ugh. Hang on. Mountain Dew, much better. Okay, drawer host brings this guy out from the side, and this is the content of it, right? So there's the toggle button, which is the back arrow here to go back. There's a text box, which does our searching, and then there's a list with a bunch of items in it. So I think we're going to have to come back and do something fancy with these items at some point, but we'll come back to that in a minute. For now, what we're interested in doing is grabbing this guy, because this is our hamburger menu. So what we are going to do is we are going to give you an automation ID. Automation properties, automation ID, hamburger toggle sounds great. I'm wondering if I should say hamburger toggle button. Yeah, sure, why not, right? So driver, find element by name, hamburger toggle button, right? And so the first thing that should be big and obvious is this guy here. Oh, yuck. Driver may be null here. Nullability sucks. I think I'm just going to do this and explicitly call out that this guy is not null. Consider, yeah, we're not going to do that. New Windows driver. Can I get away with this? Is this a thing I can do? Do you not have a default constructor? I don't want to think too hard, right? I really don't want to think too hard. You've got too many constructors and not enough of what I want. New Appium options. Can I get away with this? Because the other thing I might do is I might just put an exclamation point and suppress it and say ignore. Trust me, this thing is not going to be null. The thing is there's no way for it to know that it's not null based on this, right? And honestly, I could probably move this into like a base level constructor and make this guy read only and be done with it. Because the only async thing in here is this. UI test you write a little different. I'm just not sure how to do it. So var hamburger menu. Great. And you'll note the next big problem here is that I've basically just hard-coded these strings. What was that? Did something. Not sure exactly what that did. No, I want the using statement, please. And ultimately, that's going to be the next thing we fix. Because as you can imagine, the very next test, how about this? Can open all pages on the demo app. All right, we might even get to the point where we wire this guy into watching binding failures, because I think we can get away with that. We might be able to have some fun. Because it would be nice to have these tests be very, very robust if I can get them there. So assert not null. Boom. That guy goes like that. That guy goes like that. And then I believe, so I want to do click on the hamburger toggle button. That gets me to there. Right? So that's all happy. And then I want to find the menu items. So driver, find elements by class name. I don't know what class name is going to be. All right, so let's go back here. So hit the go button. You. I want to look at you. All right, so how do I see? I don't know what class name translates to in this tool. So list item maybe. Control type list item. So I'm somewhat tempted to put an automation ID on this. So let's do that. Let's start there. You are really obnoxious. Let's see here. So let's go back up. You're happy. Let's put an automation ID on this guy so I can grab him. Automation properties, automation ID. One of the two things that's hard in computer science is always naming things. Demo pages list box. I'm not good at naming things. I'm very bad at it. Very, very bad at it. So let's grab that guy. So we actually need to grab the list box next. So we will do find element by name. Right. Slap that guy in. Let's see. Windows element. list box, boom, assert, not null. Let's make sure we got it. And I'm kind of wondering if this guy is being marked as nullable because this thing isn't decorated, or what? Because I think this thing throws if it can't find it. Not overly confident in that. So list box, right? And then find elements by class name, right? And I think what we can do, right, is from here I think we can do list item. I think. So we're going to do list item, var list items, right? And ultimately what we're going to have this thing do is just walk through each of these. So for each var list item in list items, boom, we are going to list item, find elements, and that should change your type. Plural is important. So read-only collection, so I heard iList, because that's a whole lot easier to type. Let's see, so that's fine there. I am noticing that this says, I'm wondering if this works, right? Because find elements, because the fact that this wants to return a web element gives me pause. Oh, by Windows UI automation. Oh. Find elements by accessibility ID. Find elements by class name. That's what we were using. Find elements by ID. I think we might do find elements by name. Ments by name. And then let's just go and slap a name on those guys, right? So each of these individual text blocks we can put on here. Automation properties. Oh, I wonder, can we, there was that find by partial, right? Find elements. Wow. By link text. I'm gonna try this, right? I kind of want to just see how this works. And then we're gonna click on the list item. And then at the end, we are going to, I think, do this again, right? Because when you click on the item, it should close. The new page should open. So we should be able to find this guy. We should then click on the hamburger toggle button. So that should get us back open. And then it can circle around and grab the next item in the list. Clear as mud. I hope so. So what we're going to do is build this guy up again because we made some changes. And the automatic reloading of Xaml doesn't work if your debugger's not attached, which I'm very intentionally doing this start without debugging, right? Okay, so you, how do I clear you? Highlighter on, highlighter off. That's what I want. Go away. Okay, so now we're going to do our test explorer. Right, so expand, unit test 1 can open all pages. So let's launch and debug. Now I have a sinking suspicion that I'm going to run into an issue with this guy being minimized. Or I'm just going to blow up. Yeah, I kind of wondered about that. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this. and suppress the warning. Declare as nullable, blah, 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 suppress. Boom. Just going to turn you off because I know better than you right now. Let's see here, and debug again. Hey look, more Mountain Dew. The world is a happy place again. Yes, yes. Okay, the app has launched. We are able to find our main text. So we're happy. Go ahead and let that guy roll. Okay, so find element by name. We should hopefully find a hamburger toggle. Uh-oh. Test crash. Well, that didn't last long. So let's see what we got. Let's see. An element could not be found located on the page using the given search parameters. So first and most obvious explanation is I can't type. All right, so that's the close toggle. Hamburger. Let's just jump back here. Paste. That looks identical. I have a sinking suspicion that part of the issue is, let's collapse you. I have a sinking suspicion part of the issue is the app being minimized and its ability to find things when things are minimized. Don't know that for sure, but we're going to find out in a moment. So it is not able to find that. Find element by name. So what did we use in here? Right? Because clearly we were able to find element by name here. Let's take this little lovely guy now that we have stuff set, right? Turn highlighter on. Alright, so this button here does not have a name. Well, that's just dumb. Dumb, 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 dumb. I am somewhat wondering because I'm noticing this guy's not reporting back an automation ID. I've got a weird sinking suspicion that, okay, I can't imagine that there's a difference between .NET Core and .NET Framework. However, I don't know that to be a fact. How do I force it to run the other one? I think we just turn off .NET Core 3.1 and then launch. I'm sort of wanting to look at this in the accessibility insights because if there is a difference between .NET Core WPF and Framework WPF in terms of accessibility, it's going to make me very, very sad. Okay, so you are up, you are going, everyone's happy. Hit go. Alright, so there's that. Well, that makes me mildly happier, right? So you'll note this one here. This is the little pop-up here for the Visual Studio tools. But our button here does not have anything. So clearly my way of setting up automation IDs doesn't work. Okay. The part that's confusing me is I know this is how we were doing it on other apps where it does work. So we need to figure out why. This is where I need a UI testing guy to help me. Because me, not so smart. Other people do this a lot. Okay, so let's see what else we got on here. Accelerator key, help text, item type. Oh, name. Well, let's just change you to name then, shall we? And see what that records as. Because if that works, that makes my life easy. I just go and replace them. I'm fairly confident if you set an X name on it, that will also show up, but that is also not what we want. that. Now our button has a name. Okay, now we're cruising. Okay, so let's just go through and change where we had automation IDs, right? Boom. Change automation IDs to name. Replace all. Great. Boom. Bippity boppity booyah. Okay, so Control F5, rebuild and launch, and then we'll launch the Test Explorer against it. Come on, baby. Show me some UI tests. Show me some UI tests. Okay, debug. Again, I'm not sure how it plays when the window's not in the foreground. I think it falls apart the moment I go to click. So it found the button this time. Yeah, so you'll note it clicked there on my screen, which is fine, except for, you know, the app isn't visible, so that's not going to work because it clicked on Visual Studio instead, which is clearly not the right thing. Okay, so now let's see. Can you find your list box? Yes. Can you find list items? So I'm curious, the find element by link text. This is the one I wasn't sure about it working. Yeah, the web element one gave me pause. So how about find, well, hey, doing good. How are you doing? We are exploring the lovely depths of UI testing and all of the wonderful ways that I don't know what I'm doing. It's very, very thrilling. It is. So ultimately I want to get it to where I can run some UI tests on the material design project, because it would be very helpful to be able to catch some of our obvious bugs much quicker. That's the end goal. Currently I want a simple test that just opens the demo app and clicks through all the pages to make sure we don't go boom. Right? That at least validates things like all static resources are being resolved. So, assuming that, you know, we actually make sure that there is an example of everything in the demo app, it then covers all of them. And there's been a few times where bugs like that have slipped by, and I would like this to be able to catch it. So, a little confused here. Find element by name. So what I'm looking for is find elements by accessibility. I want to know how the selector works. Find elements by accessibility ID. This is probably an Appium thing. I suspect this is an Appium thing. So show me the selectors. I want to understand how you guys work. There is a way to make you dance, and I would really, really like to know what that is. By accessibility ID, find elements, find element. Oh, by dot, find elements. Okay. So does that mean, so I should be able to do find elements, and then I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, there should be a by, ID, name, link text. So ID to find. So if we do this, right? Boom. Unrelated question. Know any good in-depth resources for building custom controls? Been looking into building a custom control, but reading the XAML can be overwhelming at times. Ooh, that is a good question. So I don't know if I can give you a good resource that covers, been wanting to build the banner. I don't know if I can give you any good resource that covers everything start to finish. There's a lot of like individual articles that cover bits and pieces of it. But here's the basic starting point, right? So there's two ways to go about it. Option one is right-click, add new user control, and you just put everything there. The problem is that doesn't scale well, right? It's good for individual things, but not great for building out like reusable components, which the fact that you worded it as custom control sort of implies that that's not what you're looking for. More accurately, what you probably want to do is sort of in a two-step process. So let's see, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into this, and I think, let me look. There's probably a reasonable example in the project. Is this guy a good one? I'm trying to think. He might be okay. The card might be okay. Chip. Trying to decide one that I think isn't as complex. Flipper I know is a pain. The icon control isn't actually. This is actually not a horrible one. So this might be a reasonable one. So the next step is, yeah, I've been looking into Dialog Host and Expander. I think my biggest source of confusion is the storyboard animation. Yeah, so the first thing you do is you declare a class, and the key part is figuring out what control level to derive from, right? You could go as low level as deriving from like UI element or framework element. I've never really seen a use case to go lower than that, because you can derive all the way from dependency object, but I don't recommend that. But in general, you end up, at best case scenario, you derive from something like control or content control, because this gives you a lot of like the layout and sizing stuff, so that you don't have to do math. Yeah, so banner derived from content control. So derive your class, and if you don't do anything, you can stop, right? The next thing is to go through and actually create the styles for it. So by default, where is it? Blah, 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 blah. Why am I lost? So by default, it's this theme's generic is sort of a convention-based bit, right? Of how it knows how to go through and resolve these resource dictionaries. So this is a convention that it knows, hey, if I load in a library and I see this, I start here, right? So this loads this up and then references the universe, and everything goes crazy. For something like Dialog Host, and this might not be a bad one to look at. So I would say ignore the default one. Look at the embedded Dialog Host is probably a simpler example to follow, right? So you declare your style, and then the part that I imagine you're probably getting confused with is this Visual State Manager. Because you'll find a lot of samples where people just ignore it because they don't want to think about it. So if we look at Dialog Host, it's this guy. Yeah. So on top of your control, when you derive from content control, right, there's a few things to explicitly declare. These template parts and these template visual states. So specifically, this is the magical glue that links your C# control to your XAML. Specifically, all of these things are basically saying my control, any XAML template for this guy needs to have the following stuff, right? So this declares that any template for our Dialog Host needs something with pop-up part, something with part content element, and part content cover grid, right? So it needs to go through and operate, and so all of our templates have an element with those X names. By default, just kind of by convention, template parts are always prefixed with part underscore. That's just, there's nothing magical about it. That's just convention. To get to the visual state stuff, this declares, hey, I expect you to have the following visual states in the following groups. So you can imagine this can get a little confusing in that I think the usual example I see is like with button, where a button can either be in a pressed or depressed state, right? And it could also have various mouse over, mouse not over states. And those are in separate groups because they aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. So states that are in the same group have to be mutually exclusive. So a dialog host, because both of these are in the same group, cannot be in an opened and a closed state at the same time, one or the other, right? But states that are in different groups can coexist, right? So if it's mutually exclusive, they go in the same group. Not mutually exclusive, different groups. Okay, so for your Visual State Manager, generally you're going to declare it as a child inside your root element. And then inside of here, what you'll end up doing is declaring a Visual State group, and this name here needs to match the name that you declared over on your attributes. Inside of here, for now, just ignore the transitions and just focus on the two visual states. So inside of our dialog host, when we tell it to go to a closed state, this storyboard is going to execute. And the storyboard is going to go through and manipulate some properties, basically. There's a whole bunch of different ones. The key part about these states is these don't actually have really animation time. They are, I'm going to jump to the final state and be done. Right? So you'll note the duration on these is being set 0. So these are going to happen instantaneously. And the key part here is the default behavior of the storyboard is going to be to hold the end state. So if you were to go through and try to manipulate these properties in like Snoop, you'd note that it seems like they always get reset immediately as soon as you change them, or they don't change at all. That's because the storyboard is effectively just saying no, 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 no. Must hold my end state. Must hold my end state. So that's how these ones go here. There's a whole bunch of, I think, articles on the various types of animations with keyframes, double animations, and setting these things up. I usually get a little confused on them because you'll note the key properties to set on these things aren't on the animation object themselves. They're actually on attached properties for the storyboard. And you could theoretically set these on the storyboard itself, and then all of these things apply to it. This is the pattern that I think makes the most sense because it gives you the most level of control. Hopefully clear as mud. The thing up here with the transitions, right? So the actual visual states, this is effectively your end state, right? So once I go to closed, this is the state my object should be in. The transition ones are how do I get there, right? So these are the pretty animations. So when I go from closed to open, I do a whole bunch of things, right? So in this guy's case, he goes through, he's going to animate the content cover, kind of that gray overlay, right, to animate it in. So he'll start off the opacity at 0, at key times 0, and then he'll transition it to 0.5, basically, over 0.3 of a second. And so there's all kinds of animation curves. Tweening or in-betweening is usually the terminology used for these types of easing functions. And so it's going through, and this is just it manipulating all of the things inside of my template. How do I get from closed to open, right? And if we look at the other one, these are basically inverted, right? So then the last question is likely, how do I change states, right? And so inside of here, specifically in the callback, Visual State Manager go to state, right? So, and this guy here, this static call, takes in your element and then the string for your desired state. So, excellent. Yeah, I'm kind of blazing through this, and this is like a 30-second overview of the big one. So the key properties on go to state are your element is the first one. The second parameter needs to be the state name, and that state name needs to match what you set up here, right? And then the last one, and this is the one that usually gets people tripped up, is a Boolean indicating whether to use transitions or not, right? Because sometimes you don't want your control to transition from one state to another. Sometimes it's like, no, 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 get into this state now, right? So, and inside of our library, we actually make it even more complicated in that we've got an attach property that lets you turn off those transitions as well. So we go and check our attach property and turn it. It's also worth noting, you can pass a true here. Yeah, so the transition animation gets disabled. Yeah, so what will happen if a false gets passed is it's not going to use these visual transitions. It's going to just jump to the visual state and apply that instead. The other thing that's worth noting is Windows settings can actually override you here as well. So you'll so if your app like runs on Windows Server where things get the performance and doesn't have like the pretty animations on your Windows, Windows, you can pass a true and it'll say, nah, we're going to skip your animations and we're just going to go straight to the final state. So be aware, you can pass a true and Windows can say no. Let's see. So assume I want to open a banner from 0 to n height of a content control. What transition can be used? Let's see here. So going through and doing it, I think the easiest thing, so assuming you know the final height that you're trying to get to, what you can do is the double animation, and all of the animations usually have a secondary one called using keyframes, right? So the final state, so you can see an example, the animation one by itself is fairly simple, right? You tell it target element, target property, which in your case would probably be height, right? And then a to property. Now, sometimes you don't know the height, and that gets a little weird. The way you work around that, so I don't think we know the target height. Okay, so the way you work around that is similar to what we did with the expander. So rather than setting the height property directly, give me just a moment while I figure out where the heck this, because I know we did this, you abuse transforms. Rotate transform, that ain't it, that ain't it, that ain't it. That ain't it, that ain't it. Come on, where are you? Yeah, so this is, so in the expander we had a similar thing, right? Where when you click it, we want the thing to expand out. And so this gets really weird because ultimately you want to expand to a value, but you don't know what that value is. And so inside of WPF, there are on the base, I think it's framework element? Don't quote me. Yeah, framework element. There are two transform properties, layout transform and render transform. With the key difference between them being layout transform actually affects the element size, right? So it'll cause a layout pass. So if you manipulate the layout transform to say, I'm going to scale this thing to half X, it'll be half the width, and the size and all the elements around it will adjust to match. Whereas if you do a render transform, it'll just change the way it looks without changing the allocated size for it. So if you do a scale X to 0.5 on a render transform, your thing will visually look like it's been halved or is shrunk by half horizontally, but it'll still have the full space allocated for it. So you can get yourself into a little bit of a chicken and the egg problem with layout transforms, manipulating size, and this is not overly a great one, but this kind of shows sort of the way to get around it. So what you end up doing then is in your visual states, right? Rather than manipulating the element size directly, what you end up doing is you end up manipulating a scale transform. And this one is sort of a little weird, right? Because this guy has a scale transform pointed to scale X, and he's ultimately using the opacity property. So the scale here going from 0 to 1 is based upon this guy, and the opacity is ultimately what is getting modified by our Visual State Manager. So the Visual State Manager is animating opacity from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0, right? Expand or collapse. And as that property is changing, we're changing the scale property to animate out. So the only reason for changing that is expander. Practical example. Right? So when you click this expander, you'll note you see this content sort of fade in and fill its space, right? Fade out, fade in, fade in, fade out. So literally the only reason is because that's what the material design animation looked like. That was the only reason. That, and I was really frustrated one day and was bound and determined to make it work regardless of how much effort it was. And so I beat my head against this expander for a very, very long time. So don't feel bad. It's very easy to get wrong. I probably have 6 or 7 hours into trying to get this thing to do that. And it is worth noting that, especially with like layout transforms, you'll notice there's a small stutter here. And I keep wanting to go back and fix it. Because the layout transform will change the requested height and width of a control, that's actually really expensive because it causes all of the other elements around it to change size. And initially at one point, what I had done is as soon as you click the expand, I immediately calculated and allocated the correct space and then just expanded into it. So you'd see everything else jump, but not necessarily animate. And I ultimately decided that I really liked the animation, even if it caused extra layout passes. Because each step of the way as it's animating, it's going ding, 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 ding. So isn't that a bug if you have a ton of elements in the expander? Not necessarily a ton of elements in the expander, but if you have a bunch of expanders, yes. So I've seen some people where they threw a whole bunch of expanders in like a list box, kind of simulating like a tree view type deal, only with a single nesting level, and it can cause some performance hits. So use these expander templates, not a ton, right? Because especially if you like want to auto expand, like expanding on just a single mouse click isn't horrible, but if you have something, say in the back end, that goes and expands a whole bunch of things all at once, oh dear heavens, yes, you could kill your rendering layout stuff. And again, I'm not overly happy with it, and I've contemplated ways of going through and doing it, and turning that on and off. Yeah, I'm not overly happy about it. Yeah, so if what you're doing is this, again, I think the key takeaway, what I would tell you to do, is to go through and understand that your visual states are especially if you want to show like animate in the height in general, because these things really need to be static values, because it really wants to in WPF what's called freeze the objects, effectively make them sort of read only like, right? Once you set them, they're there. You can't really do bindings in these to like bind to, say, animate from 0 to my desired height. But what you can do is say animate from 0 to 1 and have that 0 to 1 be pointed at a scale, right? So rather than manipulating something directly, you manipulate something else that's going to do the animation for you. The other thing you can do is you can actually have it manipulate attached properties and have attached properties go through and do calculations and whatnot. This guy is just using a math converter to do raise to a power, right? And that's how this is ultimately working. Again, this took these few lines of code inside of this expander, like 7 hours and like 4 or 5 failed miserable attempts. So, and I don't think it's perfect, because you are absolutely correct that it can cause a significant layout problem. So, and ultimately the bug I was fixing was a layout problem, but it was one of those, do we break everybody who likes the pretty animations? And I ultimately decided I like the pretty animations. So, but yeah, if you need help or any of that stuff, feel free to even open up pull requests. If you put capital WIP right in the title, the GitHub will actually block the pull request from being merged, because that'll say work in progress. But then it's easy to get feedback and push changes and that kind of thing if you want any feedback or help on stuff. So always happy to take a look at stuff. Okay, I got distracted just a little bit. But I appreciate the question. It's more fun for me to try to go through and answer questions than it is for me to just talk and do stuff. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, so something, something, something. We were going to try to find elements, and I was going to try to use this thingy. Back to unit testing. Yes, well, ish, right? Like, again, I enjoy answering questions and coding, which is ultimately why I do this live streaming, because it's like the best of both things that I like. Let's see, automation ID. This is blank. Demo item page, right? And I actually kind of want to do automation ID on this one, right? I realize automation IDs aren't showing up in the other tool, but I'm kind of curious if it's going to work, right? So that, find by ID. It's interesting that, oh, so if I pass a by, it'll figure it out. So by must generate a selector. So by read-only collection. Sure. Okay, so move you up. Oh, I gotta close, and this is the other thing. It is very, very common to accidentally modify the app that you're testing and forget to recompile it. I have helped out several people who that ended up being the root cause of their problem, is forgot to recompile the app, which is always fun. Okay, so going to collapse that, Test Explorer, debug. Go, 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 go. And I think we can probably just jump to here, because I'm pretty sure everything else works. Look at that. It opened the side menu. Now we're cooking. Now we're cooking. Show me a list of items. Oh. Okay. But what we can do is we can cheat, right? So now that we're in this running state, I can just use my immediate window to test stuff. So list box, right? Find elements by accessibility ID, right? And I want to find demo item page. Boom, boom. Show me items. Thinking. Oh. To prevent an unsafe abort. So I think we can conclude it did not find the elements. Did I? I'm now questioning whether I actually recompiled after making that change. Let me just hypothetical, right? Show me. So list item. This doesn't have a. No. Don't do anything fancy on me, right? So list view. Demo pages list box. That's what we set, right? In our test, I think. Demo pages list box, right? So find element by name. So I really just want to find your children. You know what? I wonder if I can just iterate its children directly. Don't you have right? Don't you have some sort of like list boxy? Gimme the children. Displayed equals. I thought there was some sort of like show me my children, right? Send keys, send submit, text, to screen WinAppDriver. That's okay, so list box get type. What are you exactly? Windows element. So pretty much worthless. Okay? I want to know if I can just get your children though. So can I do something like a list box. Do you have like a find elements? Elements, right? That takes no parameters. By name, tag name. There's got to be a way to get at this guy without being overly complex, because the name is home. I'm a little curious why this guy doesn't, why home has a child bit and this guy doesn't. Right, localized control type. Feels like I should be able to query by control type. Right? That feels like something I want to do. List box. Find a class name. List item. Right? I kind of just want to use watch window to perform evaluation. Okay, fine. Fine. Come over here. Just want to find out which one of you guys will give me a value. Evaluating expression. Okay, you aborted. Something has got to give me, let's try list item camel case. A little obnoxious that it didn't adjust the size for my font change. Okay, so that didn't find it. Area property, help text. Oh, come on. You gotta have something that I can query, right? Okay, so you minimize. You're in the way. Actually, but turn that obnoxious blue rectangle off. Appium, how about find all child elements? This has, I'm not the first guy who's wanted to do this. Blah blah blah. Find elements by class name. Yeah, you'll note that this is not exclusive to WPF. So way to find a child element. Find elements. This looks more documentation page. Okay, some accessibility ID, some class name. So maybe I need to use class name to hunt it down, right? So, by class name, and what do we say? List item, I think is what it showed, right? List item, control type. I want to find all the things. I just want to get all the list items. I don't care what they are. I don't want to hard code a list. Because I have a feeling we're going to run into a fun problem the moment we get into the scroll bar, right? Because in order to click on things, they have to be visible. See, you didn't find any elements, but you have elements. Find elements by class name. Okay, so what else do we know about these guys? What else can I, like list item, XPath defined. All right, let's do that and then just back you up and try again. All right, step over. Hey, now we're talking. Now we're talking. I can XPath it. Okay. Okay, I'm down with XPath. It's a horrible way of doing things, but I'll do it. Look at that. It gave me a whole bunch of elements. right? Bippity boppity booyah! Okay. Okay, so let's grab the first item. We click on it. Boom! It clicked on home, which is great. We find the hamburger menu. We click on it. We grab the next item, which should be palette. We click it. Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Oh, F5, we're letting this thing go. Okay, so clearly we need to have a little bit of a delay. It's a little too fast. And it appears to it's doing some clicking, but it appears to have lost. Woo. Stop. Okay, so there's also another problem that I need to be careful of. If it starts clicking on my other monitor, it almost hit the stop streaming button. That is a potential risk. Live streaming with UI tests, if the UI tests start clicking where they aren't supposed to, that's bad. Okay, so that kind of worked. So click, and I think what we're going to do is await, task, delay. Let's do time span from seconds. I think 1 is probably good enough, right? Give it a minute to go through and hunt down the stuffs. Okay. So I think what we're going to do is to do another await, task, delay, time span from seconds. Ultimately, I think, so some of this stuff, I think we're going to end up creating some sort of like constants file for this, where we keep track of, you know, what is the animation time of a drawer host, because this isn't going to be exact. We just have to make sure we're long enough ish, right? So this guy comes in here. So I think we're gonna try this with some 1 second delays, right? And I think, right, so isn't there like a list item, scroll into view, or scroll or do something? Let's see, view. Location on screen once scrolled into view. Would be when scrolled onto view. So I want to scroll. How do I scroll you? I want to scroll the things. Rotate, send keys. I mean, I could send keys and just like arrow down to it, but that feels like hacktastic ugliness. Submit this element to the server. No. What I want to do is all the find, right? Execute. I don't think execute is what we want. Though maybe, right? Maybe. Let's look. This test base, didn't it have a scroll or something? Wait for element. No, there's got to be a scrolly thing somewhere. We will find it, but let's give this a shot now that I've got. So put you back in a normal state. We're going to pretend like the app just launched, right? So home. And we're going to run. And ultimately, it might be nice if this thing had some sort of boom. So home page works. Palette works. Color tool works. Oh, it's so beautiful. Look, no hands. No hands. I'm not touching it. It's running by itself. UI tests are amazing when they work and a pain in the butt when they don't. Yeah, I'm very curious what's about to happen when it gets to the end here. The other thing that's worth noting, when UI tests are running, it's usually a good idea to not touch the mouse. Thank you, Poker. It feels great. It feels wonderful. Ah, yes. I do want to see what happens when it gets to the bottom, because I have a suspicion that it doesn't know how to scroll, and it's going to lose its mind. I had to move my OBS somewhere where I wasn't worried about it accidentally clicking the stop streaming button, because that was mildly terrifying for a moment. Yes, transitions, okay. Oh, shadows was the last one. Oh, so it got the... Wait, did it? Oh, I didn't give it enough of a scroll bar. Okay. We're going to make this a little bit more obvious, right? Boom. Right? Run one more time. I really want to see what happens with this scroll bar, because I have to believe if it auto-scrolls this, I'm going to be shocked and amazed and really happy. Oh, the list box. Oh. Oh, interesting. Oh, that is interesting. Okay, so you'll note what happened is the unit test finished, but it clearly didn't click through all of these things, right? So, hey, full stack, how you doing? So I think what just happened, so by default, WPF list boxes are virtualized, which means it only creates enough list box items for the number of visible elements, plus or minus a little bit, right? So I'm pretty sure what happened is it went through, when we initially found our elements by ID, or by XPath, right? Doing good, full stack. Trying to get, so started writing some UI tests for the material design project, because I have this grand dream of automating as much of my release process as possible, and I want to have a little more confidence that, you know, changes haven't broken anything. So I'm trying to get a basic, just a basic test that just clicks through all of the pages and makes sure that, you know, things like the static resources all load and we don't crash. Seems like a simple, pretty low bar, right? Demo app should work without crashing on any page. Consider that my entry point. But the simple task of clicking through a list box is proving to be unique. So that is interesting. So without scrolling this thing, we do not get all of the elements. So the question then is, how should we, right? Because how do I know when I've reached the end? How? Okay, so we can test this theory on how many items it expects to find, right? So if we take this guy, turn him on, right? Let this thing go and do some hunting. Pause. So this thing seems to have found all the items. That would kind of ruin my theory. Okay, but before I completely discount me being wrong, which does happen, right? I want to launch it like this, right? And see how many items it claims are in that list box. Because if it comes back with a tiny number like 6, then I'm pretty confident my virtualization is what's biting me. Okay. So it found 27 items. Okay. Well, show me what happens when you get to the end then. Because it looked like you bombed out. Toggles, rating bar. Okay, fields. We're all good so far. Combo boxes. Sliders. We're slowly working our way down. Chips. I mean, it's sort of cheating, though, because the list box forces the selected item back into view, right? Leaving the next one available. Which is great. Uh-oh. Yeah, so like that last one, it clicked off on my other monitor, right? And you'll note now it's lost its mind and it's clicking on Visual Studio. So it's getting confused on the positions of items. Don't like this. I don't like this. And I'm not sure whether I should re-query the items. Is there like a refresh? List item. Oh, that's the rectangle for it. I wonder if there's like a refresh. Like I could re-query the items back out after each pass. Because I am wondering if it's getting really, really confused. So here's what I'm sort of interested in doing. List items gets list items skip list items dot count minus, I don't know, 3, right? Skip most of them, then to list it, right? So I'm curious how this is going to work. Oh, I think I killed the app. Let's relaunch it. Because this should guarantee that it is hunting items that are not visible. Right? So we're going to shrink this guy down, put him over here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move you off to the side, right? So that you shouldn't be big. Be big. Right? You shouldn't interfere with the other guy. So run. You should only pick up a few items, and they should be all at the end and not visible on the screen. So click. Oh, that's the other thing we can look at, right? So let's look at the server. Let's see, blah, blah, blah. I haven't paid too much attention at this. Element. Are those pixel coordinates or what? Let's see here. This is useful and at the same time using name value hamburger toggle menu. Let's see, button 0 element there. Button 0. So yeah, so it can't find the elements. Let's see. So let's do this. There has to be a command for this. So when in doubt, find elements, example usage, selector strategies. Scrolling has to be a deal. Hey, Full Stack, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. So Appium, let's see if we can find, okay, Appium, scroll into view. That's what I want. Smart way to scroll Appium, yeah, sure. That sounds great. Different way, methods for scrolling Appium, scroll to, oh, the driver has it. Okay, so let's take a look. Driver, scroll. Hey, don't lie to me. Don't lie to me. Find element, activate, execute script, find elements. Because the only problem with using the driver to find elements is it's basically going back to the root, right, and looking back down for it, which is fine, but ultimately we want this guy to be scoped a little tighter. Get session detail, install app, hide keyboard, navigate. Oh, that's not quite what we want. Perform multi-action, perform touch action, perform key code. We don't want to push, pull, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Not helpful. Start recording screen. Oh, this could be interesting. We could have some fun. I've got a little bit of experience with doing fun FFmpeg stuff from C#. Pull a little FFmpeg autogen into this. That could be exciting. That would be a fun way to guarantee that animations were triggering. I also wonder if that would fail in my pipeline. I don't really know how that would work. That would be interesting. Okay, but detoured. First method. Driver scroll to. Clearly not. So how are you doing this? Setting capabilities. Lots of capabilities. Great, great, great. Manage timeout. Will scroll automatically until specified text is not matching. This is not helpful. Right? This seems to imply that the Appium clients C# documentation's on GitHub. Well then, this is Selenium Appium, JetBrains Visual Studio. Great, great, great. Is there like a wiki page? Okay, so let's get started. How to start, blah, blah, blah. Don't care about that. Let's show me some code. No, not helpful. Not helpful. Page objects. Finds. Great. Great. Yeah, we were going to get to that in a minute. Target elements, class name. Yeah. That's fine. Just trying to do the bone dead simple thing first before making this any more complicated than it needs to be. Okay, you are not overly helpful. Scroll into view. I don't really need it to be a C#, but I'd kind of like to see. Okay, to do C# sample. That is not helpful, guys. Not helpful. Oh, is there a different class that you use? And do a touch? Okay. Hypothetical. Do you exist? Oh, so there's this interactions now. Okay. Okay. I can get on board with this. So touch actions, driver, scroll, list, box, right? And then I'm guessing, let's make this be a big S, right? So if this is a scroll, right? So it allows offset X, offset Y. So offset X is going to be 0. Offset Y is going to be, I don't know, 400. Big, right? Perform. Boom. Okay, so what we should see is this guy open and then get scrolled down some big distance. Okay, simple enough. Make it be so. Let's see here. The WebDriver object must implement a WinAppDriver that has touchscreen. Okay, so this doesn't work, but I am curious what else is in this namespace, right? Because this seems like the right path forward. Assuming typing is the thing. So interactions, like even like a mouse wheel interaction would be fine, right? Pointer input devices. That could work. I feel like I'm missing a subname space in here because I don't see. Oh, there is touch action. What's under interaction, maybe? No, that's probably a base class. How about pointer input device, maybe? Right. New foo. Let's do new. No, I can't type tonight. Let's try this again. Pointer input device. Show me the other ones. Pointer kinds, pointer kind. Don't want to think too hard. Okay, so what do you let me do? Create pause. Create pointer move. Oh, interesting. So rather than jumping the cursor to a thing, I can actually... Oh. Oh, that's... Okay, so... Oh, okay, so down, move, up. Okay, so if you want to do your drag and drop, that's cool. That's cool. I can get on board with that, boys. That makes sense. That doesn't give me, like, scroll functionality, right? And I could do like a send keys thing, right? But ultimately I want to scroll and then find the item. I don't like the way this works. I don't like this. Let's look at what else. What else do we have on here? Touch actions. Real quick, let's just take a look at this. I'm guessing because this guy blew up on the he did blow up on the instantiation, right? What was the exact call stack? Touch actions constructor, right? Like he blew up right on the constructor call, which means I'm not getting down to here, but I'm curious what I'm missing out on. Oh, see, this is nice, right? Drag, drop, down, double tap, click. Yeah, this is what I want. All the fancy things. Yeah, why can I not have this? Why can we not have nice things in WPF? Why? Let's see here. Key input device. What do you give me? Do you give me anything fun? Let's see. Constructor, device name, don't care. All right. Find the default. Create key down. Create key up. So you are mildly better than send keys. Not overly helpful. Okay. What else you got? What else you got? If we do just straight up interaction, can I instantiate one of you? Let me guess. You're an abstract base. Yeah. Okay, fine. How long have I been coding in this language? So C#, I've been doing, let's see, I think about 12 years. WPF has been about 9 or 10-ish years, give or take a little bit. Yeah, I assume that answers the question. Are you fairly new to the language and getting used to it, or been around at it for a while? Oh. You are... Ooh, can I do this? Can I do this? Ho ho ho! Ah, JavaScript developer. Okay. Like vanilla JavaScript, or do you have a framework of choice? Oh, no. Move to element. React. Ah, very cool. Have you done any looking at like React Native? There's been a lot of talk around the Microsoft stuff about some people believing that it is the next big UI framework, which, to be fair, they I'm not sure people realize this, Word and a large portion of Office are React native apps. So clearly works well enough for them to put one of their cash cows on it. So Microsoft is heavily invested in it. Yeah, yeah. It is one of those. I would love to. I would love to learn it, but I always come back to the idea of I really, really like my WPF. I know. I am weird. I like XAML. I have long debates with my coworkers about styling versus CSS, and they make good points that there are some ways in which the web stacks are significantly better and more mature. I will have to give them that. Okay. I don't feel like I'm making progress there. We need something else. So this guy claims you can do it that way. Is there a way that doesn't use touch action? This does driver scroll. Okay, but I think we already established that it is not on the driver scroll. Well, that is just dumb. Dumb, 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 dumb. Because this requires touch actions, and we know that our guy doesn't support touch. Okay, I am not the first guy who wants to scroll in WPF. There's no way this is a new problem. Scroll into view C# Appium. Write sample code. Smart way to scroll Android and iOS. This is not new. Yeah, see, the problem is you're using touch action, and we already established I can't do it. In Appium.NET binaries is not working. Instead, we need to use swipe functionality if you want to scroll in the app. The problem is that this is fine, right? Because you can use the Appium stuff you can use to test more than just WPF. Like we've got a substantial amount of code and projects where I work that where they use it for testing websites or native apps, like Android and iOS as well. Right? Hey, Milky Dev. Wow, thanks for coming in. Welcome, everybody. That's a lot of people. So, quick recap then for everybody just dropping in. So the project in question is material design in XAML. And I will find my GitHub link because I don't have it at the top. Holy cow, welcome everybody. So there's the project. So don't panic, but I am a WPF developer and I love it. So hopefully that doesn't scare too many people off. Looking at writing some UI tests around this library for at this point, the idea is just basically walk through the demo application pages and verify the app doesn't crash. Wow, thank you for all the follows. I appreciate it. Normally it's a nice quiet channel, and I think you have just completely dropped in, and I do appreciate it all. Hey, I am not turning down the additional followers. And if anybody has any knowledge of Appium and UI testing, I am all ears, because right now I feel like I am somewhat failing at it, because we have well, we can demo. Proof is in the pudding, right? See it work. So we've got this pretty demo app, right? It's great. It's wonderful. It has lots of cool things. Everyone loves it. I'm biased. I helped build it. So we've got a UI test that once it compiles and runs, it clicks through the menu, which is great, right? And it goes down. So right now it's hard-coded to just hit the last 3 of them, right? Which is great. And then the unit test passes. The problem being is you'll note it worked really well when pretty much everything was visible on the scroll bar. Like shadows is the last item, and even scrolled all the way to the top, it's there. The problem comes is when the app is more like this, right? And I can't hit the bottom, and then it loses its mind. And so the question is how to scroll. feels like it should be an easy thing to do. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. So, yeah. So that's the problem. And that's where I got stuck at. Or currently stuck at. I'm also a heavy consumer of Mountain Dew. Because where I'm at, it's 11:15 at night. And apparently I'm not the only one crazy enough to be awake at this time. But that's where we're at. And usually I sign off about 15 minutes ago, but I hate leaving problems unsolved, and so I really kind of want to solve this because this is frustrating. 2:15 a.m. Oh, I am sorry. So 3 hours ahead of me. What is that? East U.S., I think, depending on daylight savings time and whether you're in a place that respects it or not. Time zones suck. Ooh, 6 and 7 a.m. Wow. Wow. Whew, boy. 6 or 7 a.m. So what is that? Is that all the way over on like what? Western Europe somewhere? Maybe? London? Okay. I'm not too far off. So, of all the people who dropped in, is anyone in here Ireland? Nice. Anyone in here a WPF developer, or what's people's language frameworks of choice, I guess is the first question. What is interesting to people? Okay, and I'm gonna have to go back to I gotta quit losing my pages. I've got too many tabs open. So I guess if anybody hasn't seen it, the Microsoft Build Conference was this last week. Lots of great stuff there. I'm going to drop this because I think it's amazing. So there are tons of videos and sessions of all of the latest stuff. So JavaScript primarily, okay? So is that like vanilla JavaScript, or do you have a target, or I guess a happy framework that you prefer? Vue.js, okay. Very nice. You know what? I'm gonna detour a little bit. So I have a horrible habit of rabbit trailing off onto other things. So I'm gonna show off something else because I think it's kind of cool. Cool. Did have a fondness for ASP.NET Core before though. Awesome. So this project here, if anybody's interested in. So full disclosure, I work for a company called IntelliTect. So this is shameless self-promotion. That search engine. Yes, I Google with Bing. So my company built this project, and we've used it successfully in a lot of different clients of ours. But the idea being that most of the... yes, Bing does give rewards, and I shamelessly use it for Amazon gift cards. It is wonderful. But we built out this Coalesce project. You basically... So for people who are familiar with ASP.NET Core and kind of the standard layout where you usually have entity framework behind the scenes, and then you have to build out effectively a ton of middleware, right? Because you've got controllers that have to talk to your DB context for saving data. You then have to have something in like TypeScript, JavaScript for communicating with your controllers and back and forth. This is basically a way of getting rid of that. So most of what you do, you end up building out the database layer, and then it auto-gens a ton of stuff for the front end all the way through, right? So I am not a great web developer, but this is something that is being used on several of our big clients, and we've got a good team backing it. So if people are interested in something like this, this is a awesome project. You can feel free to log issues, pull requests and feedback. Currently for the code gen, it's only doing Knockout and Vue.js. So yeah, it has saved us a significant amount of time. I'll put it that way. It's one of those things that we would like to think makes us a little more competitive in that we can stand up sites for people and at least give a really good proof of concept of here's what we can do. A lot of times we use the generated templates as a starting point because they're good, they're nice, but there's no way to like auto gen out everything that you need, right? Everybody's going to want it to be customized and look something else. I think it uses a lot of like bootstrap theming by default. At least it did. I haven't played with it in the last version. It is also a there's a little bit of EF stuff that's going on with it right now. Yeah, showing you a combo of both. Yeah, so because Vue.js definitely works. One of the primary devs on this is very much a Vue.js fan, and so this was his pet for a while of trying to make sure that it got working. But it works, again, really well for us, and so always interested in getting more feedback from people on what they think. But it really is, you define out your DB context. They've got some, I'm trying to remember what it is. There's a script you end up running that actually does the code gen. There's been talk of trying to make it run automatically, but it doesn't currently run automatically. But the docs here, I already have them open. Code gen overview, right? So he spent the developer Andrew has spent a bunch of time going through and doing this and setting this up, hopefully to make things easy. But ultimately, when you run the code gen, it's going to gen up all of your controllers for you. It's going to generate a whole bunch of DTOs for communicating with the front end. It'll generate a Vue client or a Knockout client, depending on which one you want, and then you're off to the races. So, and I believe, where is there's a demo. Where's the demo? Where is the demo? Why am I crazy? There is a demo site. Getting started, documentation, home builds. Yeah, there is. Check out the demo. So, yeah, Coalesce, IntelliTect.com. Again, shameless self-plug, but I think it's cool. So, demo, right? So, this is all just stuff that you get for free. You can see the auto. So these are the auto gen views. So we've got like person, case, company, etc. Right? So we jump into company. We automatically, like, it'll gen the table view out. You'll notice it's doing the load asynchronously, pulling stuff back. It does pagination, editable. So, right? So we can jump in. Right? You'll note it does auto saves in the background for us. So we can jump back. Hey. Why did you not edit? Why did you not edit? Oh, it's there. I just was too quick. Gotta be slower and wait for the auto refresh to pick it up. Right? So goes through and picks stuff up. You can make the table editable. So you can just type straight into the table. Make read only. Going straight my bookmarks. Awesome. Yeah. Again, shameless self-promotion, but I think it is really cool. And they've done a lot of work in the last few months to make sure the doc's up. So not just Vue. It will do Vue or Knockout. But with that said, you don't have to use the generated Vue code if you don't want to. Vue being VIEW. You could certainly go through because it'll generate out TypeScript clients. So if you're using TypeScript with anything on the front end, right, you can still use the client to invoke your controllers on the back end. So if you only want it to gen out and you want to throw away with that stuff, so that is certainly an option as well. So yeah. Cool, off the band. Thanks for dropping in. Appreciate it. Again, always nice to have a bunch of new faces in here. So, yeah, at some point, especially if this is interesting to people, I might see if I can pull in some of my coworkers to kind of walk through using this, because I think this might be, if people find this interesting, again, I think it is really cool, and I will see if I can sucker in one of my coworkers who's been working on this to be able to do it. So yeah, lots of features, admin sections, auto-gen, easy drop-downs, pretty UIs. But yeah, cool. Yeah, if people are interested, yeah, my subscribe to the Twitch channel and YouTube ones, and I try to keep things posted. I usually stream what's Thursday. Whoa, let me rephrase. What's Thursday night for me, Friday morning for some, and go through and do that. But I've also been known to do ad hoc streams. So yeah, if people are interested in that, actually while I'm thinking about this, I'm gonna just go and pop the message off and send myself a quick reminder. There. That way, tomorrow I will see if I can line somebody up and go through and do this. Because I am not much of a web developer. I'm good enough to be dangerous. I do enough of it, and I also teach at a local university where we do a web class, so I can get myself by. But some of this stuff and laying it out is definitely beyond me. So cool. Okay, well, I think, I hate leaving stuff undone, especially while I'm going crazy. I really, really want to scroll this. I have a feeling, though, this scrolling problem of mine is probably going to go away when I can grab one of my QA engineers at work tomorrow and just pin them down and say, answer some questions for me real quick. Because I have to believe that they've solved this problem already. And in fact, okay, actually, that's a good point. So I should look because we have a test tools repository. No. IntelliTect, something, test tools. Where is the repository? Not finding it. That is interesting and remarkably shocking to me. Why? Yeah, right here. Test tools. Why? Let's see. Something with selenium, right? That's just a demo. That's just a demo. There's got to be a simple automated UI test. Yeah, again, I have to believe they've actually written something in here. Because ultimately this is usually, they like to codify their UI so that you don't have, something ugly like what I did with all of the hard-coded strings everywhere. You put those behind some object model that represents your UI so that if something changes, you fix it in one place, everyone's happy. But this doesn't seem to handle scrolling. I want something with scrolling. So show me how you scroll. Scroll into view. Hey, that sounds remarkably like what I want. Scroll into view. Oh, yuck. This is for the JavaScript side. Yeah, that will not work. You cannot use JavaScript inside of a WPF app like this. So this is clearly just the web side of things. So I think I may just spend my time and go through and hack away at that. So, well, thank you for everybody for dropping in. Sorry for going short, but I think I'm going to bail for tonight because I think my Mountain Dew caffeine streak is slowly wearing off on me. I will see about getting something set up for the Coalesce stuff if people are interested, and we'll post things out on Twitter and whatnot, and it'll be a good learning experience for me as well. I'll see who I can rope in from IntelliTect to help me out with it. So, awesome, guys. Cool. Well, thank you very much for dropping in. I'm going to say happy coding and good night, and we will see everybody again next time. Thanks.